Welcome everyone to Harbro's webinar tonight, where we're going to specialise in sheep. I'll introduce myself for a start. My name is David Mackenzie and I'm part of the team here at Harbro. And tonight we're going to focus on sheep, and we're going to focus with two very special guests who I'll just say hello to at this point. We've got Andrew Jones.
Evening, David. Evening, folks.
Evening, Andrew. And Ewan Gordon.
Good evening, everyone.
And we've also got Jill Hunter joining from Harbro, our beef and sheep nutritionist.
Evening.
Now, first of all, I'd like to welcome farmers who have tuned in from right across the UK, and we're very fortunate to have some international attendees as well. So I want to make sure that everyone takes something from this evening and enjoys it, and we're going to really try and spread this hour that we've got with you, concentrating on sheep calendar, what we can learn, and certainly from a Harbro point of view, I would just try and give a little bit of background, because we'll have some customers and non-customers. So Harbro's a business that's concentrated based in the UK and in Scotland, and right from the early days of Harbro, it's over 40-year-old business, and we've really concentrated on sheep production, both in the pedigree side and the commercial market. The background for that, there's a few key people that started this and had a real focus, with people like Peter Kenyon, Willie Thompson, who really were invaluable at creating the products and the messages with some of the key farmers. Now, the building blocks from that was to share information and take the academic learnings from the Rivet Research Institute at Aberdeen, and with some leading professors like Professor John Robinson. That's really the base that we use today to build our business. Now, taking that today, we take in some of the best farmers that we can work with in sheep, and we've also a continuing partnership with Glasgow Vet School. So between that two parts, we're trying to not only make our customers more profitable, more efficient, but as an industry, we see an invaluable place in the UK agriculture for sheep. And hence, it's vitally important that we keep moving that forward. Now, one of the best ways that we can try and do that as a whole business is to share information from each other. Now, that can come from our on-farm team, or our retail shops that we have that cover right from Shetland down to the borders. Our marketing team will be very pleased that I've managed to mention that for them so early on. So there's a tick from myself already. We have putting this together so that the real life scenarios can be shared, can be spoken through, and I'm very grateful to both Andrew and Ewan for joining and being and for sharing that. So the format for this evening, what we're going to try and cover tonight, we're going to start. Well, I'll ask both our speakers to give an introduction to the farming businesses. We're going to then concentrate on their farming year with sheep, starting from tupping and doing a whole calendar year right through to the lambs that leave the farm, and the different points that they benchmark and take their KPIs from there. Once we've done that, we're going to try and pull out any issues that they're seeing this year that they want to discuss, and I'll pull Jill in at that point to try and answer any questions. Now, this is a really interactive session. This is something that we want people to input. There's a big number of people who have tuned in this evening, and it's vitally important that if there's something you would like to ask any of the panelists, between Andrew, Jill, and Ewan, please put a question forward to us in the box that's available. We're going to leave plenty of time at the end to answer these questions, because often that's the bit that you can take your learnings from. So within our hour, we're going to try and cover that. So please put that in, and we'll aim to try and cover as many questions as possible. So starting now with our speakers tonight. First of all, Andrew, can I ask you, Andrew, to give a bit of background, please, for our audience?
Aye, we're on the island of Islay on the west coast of Scotland. We're running around 1,800 acres of upland and lowland ground kind of mix, and we're running on these acres with 1,100 cows, suckler cows, with about 100 acres of cereal annually. We're right on the coast of the island, right next to the sea. There's nothing west of us, there's nothing really between us and America, so we're pretty exposed. But that's about the gist of the farm on what we've got.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Ewan, would you give us an introduction to yourself, please?
Great, thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. I'm farming with my father John at Wellheads at Huntly, with 1,250 acres here, good, bad and indifferent. About 500 acres rotational grass, 300 acres improved kind of pasture, permanent grass, 400 odd acres of rough summer grazing and hill ground, and about 50 acres of trees. Farm carries an all grass farm. We've got 300 limousine cross suckler cows, split between spring and autumn calving. Everything's bull to the Charley and sold at a year old through Thainstone. Sheep wise, we've 1,200 Scotch mule ewes, lambing indoors from 26th March, and all lambs are just sold dead weight to Morrison's at Woodheads at Turriff. And then we've also got 30 pedigree, Texel and Suffolk ewes as well, which are just used to breed our own stock tups. So, over here.
Hi, good, okay. Well, it's the UK starts lambing really from January through to May. We're entering that time of year that I know Ewan's father John would call the pre-harvest bit. He always calls when he sells his lambs his harvest. So we're entering the pre-harvest bit. So if I can ask maybe Ewan for a start, to try and explain, Ewan, when you're starting your sheep calendar year, let's start with preparing the ewes for tupping. How do you build up from that point? From the ewes are weaned, you're building them up to tupping time. Can you share with us what you do in that process, please?
Yeah, well, from towards the end of September, we'll take all the ewes in, just go through everything, pick out any non-breeders, any ewes we're not breeding with anymore. We'll also pick out all the cast ewes, of which we'll keep the fittest 50 of them and put them to the top. We'll condition score all the ewes, so anything leaner will go on to what we call field, just kind of all the fields that we've taken a cut of silage off quite close to the steading. So in the aftermath, we use it for finishing lambs and also calves, but after that, put some leaner ewes on just to build up their condition score so that everything's ideally heading towards the top at about a condition score of 3.5. Ideally, at that point, we'll go through feet as well, pick out any ewes with problems, run them in a separate group so we can get them back up to scratch as well. And then we kind of heading in, tups go out in 1st of November, but heading through month of October, we house all our spring cows and calves quite early, get them in on side onto slats. So that gives us, that lets the grass come away a bit for getting the ewes onto them through middle, late October. Don't want to put the ewes onto too good grass too quickly, because mules, if they are running, quite fit at that time, if you let them get a sniff of good grass, the scanning percentage just seems to multiple all the time. So yeah, and then just a couple of days before the tups go in, we move the ewes onto better quality grass, and then tups go in. They're about one tup to about 40 odd ewes. All tups are keeled, so it's all based on the numbers. So we can house 400 ewes at a time. So as they lamb, we'll get the keel mark of the next one and the next one to take in and just keep turning them over. Also, quite important, we feel for keeling the tups and the fact that you can feed accordingly. There's no point in feeding an early lambing triplet the same as a late lambing single. So it lets us, target the feed a lot better and in that kind of respect there. And
a very quick loaded question from me, Ewan. What do you give
Harborough feet and feet fertility. Before you ask the question, David.
Well done, Ewan. Well done. Very important. Very important. Thanks, Ewan. If I ask the same question to yourself, Andrew, how do you prepare that ewe for tupping, and what happens through then at that point?
We're pretty much, there's no much difference between us, to be quite honest with you. We're lambing a wee bit later, a lot due to just the later springs. It seems to be, seasons seem to be changing a wee bit, I presume, across the board, but certainly in this area where grass is coming later. So we're not lambing till about the for the main inside lot, your Scots mules, your Cheviot mules and whatnot. We've got some blackies and Cheviots lambing middle of on kind of sheltered areas, kind of warrens, raised beaches and whatnot. But apart from that, we're the same. We'll run our ewes hard from kind of end of September. The good fields will be shut off, let the grass grow, run the ewes on kind of harder ground, and then them onto good flushing fields. We're a wee bit longer on the fields than you, and we're maybe a week before the tups go out. The sheep will go onto the flushing fields. Again, the same. We're keeling the tups. We're more the opposite. We'll keel the tups after they've been in kind of 10 days or a fortnight, and the ones then with raddle marks, they'll be fed. We know they're later. They'll be fed different. They'll know this year. They'll not be in until later on. We'll try and leave them out as long as we can. So yeah, apart from that, we're identical to you, and just a different time.
Just question for both of you, maybe. How long have you got a set time you are leaving the tup, or is that dependent on weather, or how do you gauge that, Andrew?
We're leaving the tups out 6 weeks. It's the way we've done it for a long time. Breeding wise, we breed our own replacements. So what we've done, we're getting less and less ewes lambing in the second cycles, and part of what we've been doing is ewes lambing, like ewes would be keeping replacements out of that are lambing in the second cycle. We won't keep any females out of these sheep, and it seems to be working. It's a slow process, but we're getting there for a tighter lambing. We'll pretty much have 80-90% of our lambing cleared within the first 3 weeks. Okay.
And are you similar time? Are you leaving the tup in?
Yeah, we'll just slightly less. We're tups in for 5 weeks.
Okay.
We're buying in all our replacements, so everything just sees tup for 2 cycles, and then tups are pulled from there.
Okay. So if I'm moving you forward, then maybe start with Andrew, and moving you forward to that sort of period. Let's just maybe take, a lot of people are scanning this time of year. From that period, from sort of scanning through to the point of lambing, what is your nutritional supplements, and how do you work that? How do you gauge what you do from that point?
A lot of it's based with the different, singles, twins, triplets. They'd all be fed in different areas and different ways and whatnot. Twins and triplets, they're obviously getting more, but everything is all get Harborough Vitality buckets. For a start, they'll get all the sheep. Will get them from scanning right through. Twins and triplets, they're on a TMR ration with 80% nuts mixed in with silage, and they're on from scanning time. They're on about a quarter of a kilo for the twins, running up to about a kilo a day, coming up to lambing. Triplets, the twins will stay out. They'll stay out till about maybe 3 or 4 days before they start lambing. Sometimes they're starting popping them out before you even got them in the shed, but that's one of these things. But triplets, they'll be in kind of hectovac time, about 6 weeks before lambing. We're bringing the triplets into the shed, and they're getting kind of that wee bit extra cake and whatnot, just to give them a bit extra, if you like. Single, we try and do as little as possible with them. A lot of it depends on body condition. You've got, big fat ewes where with the singles, we're just trying to kind of keep them on a maintenance, just mainly so as we're not having full big lambs out of them. As long as the ewes have got plenty of milk, that's our main game. I would rather a ewe popping out a small lamb than lambing every second ewe, if you like,
And just when you were saying you were feeding a TMR, and then you were speaking about the volume of concentrate feeding in that, are you feeding that concentrate feeding within the TMR?
It's within the TMR, yeah, and that's right through lambing time as well. We used to feed the concentrate separate in the shed, They'd be fed twice a day in feed toss, and we were getting a hell of a lot of prolapses back then. And what we found since we went on to TMI is we pretty much eradicated prolapses. It's, you know, every bite's the same, and you know what, the fitter ewes or the stronger ewes or the bullies, if you like, they'd be getting, you know, if you were feeding them separate, you know, cake on a trough or whatever, they were getting the lion's share of it, and then maybe Shire sheep weren't getting enough. So the TMI, it's not for everyone, but we've got the kit with the running cows and whatnot, and it certainly works for us.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just a point. Some people, a TMR is a total mixed ration, so it's when everything is mixed into one feed and it's not fed separate. So just a small point there, but no. Thanks for that, Andrew. So
Yep.
So Ewan, can you take us up now, Ewan, to the point of lambing, please?
Yeah. So we scanned ewes yesterday. So the tups certainly did their job. We finished up all in of a scanning percentage at 209%, with over 300 sets of triplets scanned. So the pet lamb, the milk machine could be busy again going forward this year. So yeah, no, good scan, thankfully. So as of yesterday, we split all the ewes into 5 batches. Singles run, there's one, early lammer, triplets, another twins, and then middle twins and late lammers. So that just allows us to feed everything accordingly in the run up to lambing. Everything now has access to silage, although the milder weather the last while, they haven't just been maybe taken to it as much as we might like, but so that's where they are now. On move from feed and fertility tub to forage booster tubs now. So they'll then stay, and they'll move on to vitality tubs about 6 weeks pre-lambing. Also about 6 weeks pre-lambing, that's when we'll start to feed ewes, building triplets up to about 0.75, 0.8 of a kilo a day. Quite in the last kind of fortnight, 3 weeks to lambing, we'll split that over twice a day feeding. Twins, they'll receive about half a kilo to 0.6, and as Andrew was saying, singles, don't feed them much. It's just trying to strike the balance of not having a big lamb, but trying to get that plentiful milk supply so that we can twin on just to absolutely everything, pretty much. So that's kind of coming up to lambing. We just feed, we take a couple of cuts of silage, so we'll make bales we just find it easier feeding bales outside in ring feeders, and then do that until the ewes come inside. Twins and triplets will have access to molasses as well. So that there. No 2 years are the same, weather dependent really. We may house ewes just day before lambing, ideal scenario. Sometimes the weather's wet, stormy, we take them in earlier. Seen us house triplets as early as mid-February before. It just all depends on the weather. Last year they were just out until the days that they needed to, just the days before lambing. So that's kind of split there. So we keel the top, so we just keep coming in, and obviously just let you target the feeding of allow it, you know, feeding early lammers more and late lammers not so much, and just building them up so everything's controlled that kind of way.
Okay. For everyone that's on this that's ever had sheep, you guys are making it sound very easy to this point, and so I'm hoping that when we as we move into the lambing shed and we move into lambing time, that you've actually had some problems there. So Ewan, if you would, I know that you've got a very highly productive lambing setup, which you've your family's mastered over a few years. Would you try and describe how the setup works for us, and also, please, can you share 1 or 2 problems so that we can we don't all feel inadequate here, please?
I better watch what I describe as problems, and not insult anyone. But well, the biggest, just going on what you said there, unfortunately, the biggest factor with Andrew as well for ourselves is weather. If you get good weather right up until lambing, it can be grand. You know, ewes are generally in good condition, everything's fine. But if you get bad weather, it's just well, you don't need to go into say about the problems that follow from there. So, in the lambing shed, I've been drummed into me from a young age, from senior, that you've got to be organised, and there's a pretty strict system in place that everyone knows what they're doing and got their roles, and it works quite well. So ewes come inside, they're split up across two sheds. Sheds are just identical, fed a TMR along the front, bedded with a straw bedder along the front, and then there's pens all along the back, just off the wall. So ewes will lamb, pop them into a pen, and then from there they go out the other side of the pen and run right along the way, a passageway at the back wall, out the door at the end. So we'll have a shed full of twins, and the other shed will be kind of split, mainly triplets and singles. So cross fostering lambs just at any opportunity. Twins, hopefully all not too much troubles there, and they're out the door quite quickly. What else is there to say about
Well, just a point on that, Ewan. So how do you get this big single lamb? How do you get that second lamb on it? What's your key to success there?
A mule ewe is very good.
As simple as that, is it?
Just about as simple as that. We've got someone in the shed 24 hours a day. So you see a single lambing, you basically leave it until it's just about to lamb it itself, jump in, spare lamb there, lamb it on top of the other one, and then the lamb that has been fostered on, just put it in the pen with the ewe for 20-30 seconds, and then drop in our own lamb, and it's usually not too much hassle. But yes, there is always problems, and we do have adopters, and sometimes the swear word here of a single, it may have to leave the shed as a single, which senior curses at.
And just a question on that, Ewan. What would the rate of success be on that? So are we speaking 90%? We speaking 99%?
Well, obviously there is some ewes where there's maybe not enough milk, an older ewe or a gimmer, where we don't foster on a lamb. But I would say, and the times that we do go to foster on a lamb, I would say the success rate is quite high, because we ensure that everything's fine and souped and all the lambs are full before they leave the shed. So if you get them to that stage, I would say it is quite a high percentage. I think it is really important, especially with our type of sheep and the mules, to cross foster all the time, because the mule is more than capable of rearing two lambs. So it's a bit of a waste to see her running about the countryside with one lamb when it's more than capable of rearing two. So that's the reason. Now we do, however, still end up with a large amount of pet lambs, obviously with scanning results quite high, and then, as I said, someone in the shed all the time, just saving as many lambs as possible. So they're all just reared artificially on a milk machine. We should also say we don't put any ewes outside with 3 lambs. She's got 2 tits for a reason. So we just feel that it would work in some places at certain times of the year, but it's not going to work at the side of a hill in Huntly at the end of March and the middle of April. We just feel that, out with 2 lambs, she'll make a good job of them. She'll be able to gain a bit of condition herself and get herself ready for the year ahead. And the 3rd lamb, if it's not fostered on, will go on and thrive in the pet lamb pen. So that's the reason there, rather than putting them out with 3 and then you get a cold week, sleety night, and pick 1, if not 2, up in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to cover anything else, Ewan, just on lambing time, or?
No, Andrew can
Aye, good.
let us into his delights.
So Andrew, just the same question to yourself. So from the point of starting to lamb, what's your system and key to success through that point?
We're very similar. We've got foster just as many singles turn into twins as Ewan would. We've got a lot of ground that isn't suitable for a yow with 2 lambs. We've got pretty much no ground that's suitable for a yow with 3 lambs. So triplet wise, anything form a triplet. As soon as the 3 lambs have had a colostrum off the mother, which in my opinion is the most important thing, the mother's colostrum. One of the lambs will split off and put into 8 pen, as we call it, and the mother will be out with 2 lambs. Pets are then, they're available for, if you've got problems. There will be some sheep that have got 1 lamb and have got, a dairy cow's udder kind of thing that will wet adopt. Same way as, same processes as Ewan is doing as well. Again, same, we're feeding a TMR along the front. We're straw bedded with a straw bedder daily as well. We've got 3 areas in the shed with lambing pens, which are all piped with 6-inch drainage. Well, it's not drainage pipe, it's solid pipe with holes cut in it. So as they've basically got fresh water 24 hours a day, which we only put in 2 years ago, I think it was, which labour saving on that on its own has been massive. The amount of time that's involved in carting buckets of water to and from little pens is just unreal. So that's been a massive saving kind of thing. So apart from that, it's very similar. Lambs are, twins and singles that you see them born 4 or 5 in the morning. If they're up and sucked and full by daylight, they're marked and they're out the door the same day kind of thing. The quicker you can get them out the door if the weather's there, the less chance there is of getting problems, which we all get. There's pneumonia, there's any bloody thing you can get in a shed. So quicker, weather permitting, quicker we can get the lambs and yows out the shed, the better for us.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. So, Andrew, just so we've taken you right up to the point of finishing lambing, that euphoric moment when the last ewe does lamb, and from that point, then you've taken that lambs through. What's your main areas that you would maybe try and share with us just now, taking that lambs up for that next couple of months post lambing?
Post lambing, let's say they're out the shed onto fields and hopefully onto grass that's starting to grow. It's not always the case, but it seemed that the later lambing that we've got, the grass is starting to come. Where historically we were then carrying on feeding concentrate, with a lack of grass and whatnot. The last couple of years, we've found with the grass coming kind of middle of April and whatnot, what we've done is we've been using the vitality buckets. We've doubled up on the recommendations. I think it's 1 bucket per 40, so we'd put 1 in per 20 in each field. And we found that's actually, that with a bite of grass has been enough to keep, yows in decent condition. They're kind of milking off the backs, if you like. Leaner yows and whatnot, they'll carry on getting concentrates outside. But any yows a bit of flesh about them on a decent bit of grass, they're just on these vitality buckets with their lambs. What we've found with that as well is we've had far less shepherded feeding done. They're getting that, and what we found with feeding concentrates, yows are all running for the food. They get miscoloured and whatnot, which is easy sorted, but it's one less thing to do if you're not having to do that. So that's what works for us. That'll carry on. The buckets are with the yows right through the summer, right up until feeding time. So they're rotationally grazed between fields as well, so you kind of try and keep the grass always fresh in front of them.
So once using lambed inside, out the grass, buckets, grass, no feed at all.
No,
you've been able to work that system with just relying on grass.
We've been able to work that system, just lambing that wee bit later. The grass has come then, and like I say, there are some fields that we haven't got enough grass, so we will need to feed concentrates. And part of the course, you have to do that. And that concentrates to supplement the lack of grass, keep yows, keep the lambs thriving. They'll still have the buckets with them. We found the lambs quite keen on the buckets, to be quite honest with you. But like I say, any fields like younger grass fields or shelter fields that have got a bite of grass, it's just been buckets. And for the last kind of 3 years, it's definitely worked. So if it's not broken, we're not going to fix it, kind of thing. No.
Okay. So and up to that point, then, when are vaccinations and how do you do your worming practice, or what way do you work that then, Andrew? How do you work your system?
We'll do the obviously we'll heptivac all the lamb. Well, we'll ovivac all the weather lambs. Any lamb would be getting kept would obviously get the heptivac around about 6 weeks after lambing, and then everything then they'll get just a worm dose at that point as well, and then in a monitoring basis after that, we've now got the local vets for the first. They've got something at the vets we can now test for worm counts on the island, which we've never been able to do before. So going forward with that is going to be a big bonus for, not worming. You don't need to worm and worming on egg counts, if you like. So going forward that's the route we'll be going down, and be doing egg counts. You get the results on the island rather than waiting, a week, 10 days to get your results, if you like.
Okay, thank you. So Ewan, you just come back in there, please. So you finished lambing again. How does your system work then, Ewan, taking that lamb through for this early few months of its life?
Well, vaccination wise as well, as you just said, with heptivac is kind of 3 to 4 weeks pre-lambing as well, everything on the heptivac system, and we also dectomax all the ewes on their way out the shed. So that covers them for worm wise. Lambs in the first few months, well, without doubt, the first few hours are the most important. So back to kind of what you were saying just when you went off, lambing time here is quite intensive and full on, and plenty of labour, because you put in all the work throughout all the year getting the ewe to that stage with a belly full of lambs. So if you're not there to treat her and look after her when she needs it the most, that's when we find the biggest return in your investment is then. And then similar to Andrew, all ewes and lambs are just returned outside when weather permits, onto good kind of grass fields, which have had quite a few months to lie dormant. We'll hopefully get slurry spread on them through the month of January and early February, so there's a bite of grass. But we will continue feeding ewes harbour rolls at grass. We just find that it's very important to get that ewe, starting to gain condition again, ready for the season ahead. And by feeding a ton of rolls then is a similar price to a ton of lamb finishing pellets. And I just feel it's much easier spending your money then, and you're helping the ewe and the two lambs get off to the best start, rather than spending your money in November with trying to fill up going through a heap of skitter, trying to fill up lamb hoppers, and the lambs are eating having to eat quite a bit just to stand still. So we do feed weather dependent again, just when grass stops. I've seen us feed right through the month of May, especially last year when May was such a bugger, we fed right through. From kind of around through the month of May, we'll start taking ewes and lambs back in, just a field a day. Ewes, any feet problems addressed, we'll dag and clip all ewes' tails. Lambs, they'll get their first Ovivac injection, scratch for ORF, and also we've started doing them with Click Extra at that point. It gives about 5 months cover. So that covers you for most of the season. It's got quite a long withdrawal, so we need to, I think it's about 40 days off the top of my head. So, we need to do them early in the 1st of May, so that within 40 days, it takes you to the middle of June. We're not got lambs going away until the later half of June, but that covers you for the season.
And just a question at you, and are you just doing the lambs, not doing the ewes?
Just the lambs, not the ewes. Yeah, just the lambs. Ewes are all done after clipping time. At clipping time, we'll do all the ewes with Goron then.
And you're saying, Ewan, that you dag all the ewes, you do that. Now that's let's say maybe more an old-fashioned way of doing things, but you feel that's been a benefit, and it's.
Well, it definitely helps. Just it saves the build up of any muck as well, and also just it's a lot tidier, especially when it comes to clipping time as well. If all that's out helps the shearers immensely. You've not like the same dirt to deal with. Everything's a bit cleaner. So yeah, we'll just continue to do that for that benefit.
Good. Okay. So Ewan, if you could continue me on here, Ewan. So if you could take now from that sort of stage, you've brought us up to through to starting to pick your first lambs for slaughter. So you know what's the process that you would work from that 2 stages?
Well, just after all the lambs have been marked, and that will there's not really much happens with the sheep for from that for the next month. And then when we do take them back in on the 1st of June or thereby first week in June, on their second Olivac and first worm dose then as well. And then next kind of main event will be clipping time, where we'll go through some of the biggest lambs there, hopefully get the first load of lambs away around the last days of June. Yows are all shorn, and that, as I say, get a pour on. Lambs also, if it's into July, may get another worm dose. Then we'll just start picking lambs through the month of July off their mothers. We're just into tariff weekly with lambs. So through July, August and September, we've about 120 lambs going off every week to tariff. So that's the kind of story there. And then in towards weaning time, we'll wean everything between first days of August and mid-August. From at that point, all lambs are put onto silage aftermath. Make a cut of silage. We're a bit later in taking off silage. It can generally be around the 1st of July, because all the ewes and lambs are turned out the shed onto our silage fields from 1st of April to the 15th of May, when it's shut off for silage. So lambs weaned onto better grass. Yows are returned out the hill. Fittest of them to return out the hill. Leaner yows maybe just onto some permanent grass, just a slightly fresher bite for them. And then just continue to draw lambs through the summer. We size up all the lambs accordingly into batches, so we're not going through all the lambs all the time. We'll pick out anything, of kind of 4 or 5 different lots, ranging from just depending anything under 30 to 30 to 34, 34 to 38, 38 to 42, 42 to 44, and then you're just picking. We're just going through the batches of lambs that we need to.
And just a question, you in there. What weight would you be picking a lamb for slaughter live? Obviously. Well,
now tariff are paying up to 22 kilos dead weight. Now it used to be 21, so that's kind of put in an extra kilo dead weight, so another 2 kilos live weight. So off their mothers in July time, we'll be going to 40. I would say we'll start taking lambs out at 42.5 to 43 now, to aim for 22, and then general rule of thumb, every month kind of move on a kilo. So by September time, you can get away with lambs at ideally at 47 kilos to hit the 22 kilos dead weight.
At some point, you've crep fed lambs as well, and you've used that as a management tool.
Yeah, we have. We only started doing that a couple of years ago with some of the oldest lambs to try and keep them going, and yeah, it definitely worked. I would say it maybe didn't benefit if the yow was milking very exceptionally well. The lambs maybe didn't take as much, but when we took the lambs in for weaning, they were so even. There was no tail end of lambs at all. Obviously, some of the older, maybe or a gimmer, poorer milking ewes, it gave their lambs every chance, and it did what it saved. In May last year, 2021, without feeders to the oldest 400 lamb ewes, and that was a massive boost then. Well, obviously the weather's so bad, but then after weaning, there was no, it's just no feed. It was just a trial, but as I say, it definitely paid dividends in helping some of the poorer lambs. It took them up quite a bit.
Okay.
Again, it's a good, a ton of feed costs the same whether you feed it then or in the back end. So, you get good return on your money then. When the lambs are small, only need a small amount, very efficient converters. rather than feeding it in the month of December and blowing drift with snow.
I think at this rate, Ewan, you're going to get a sales area and a phone and a car shortly. So,
well, someone informed me it was your birthday today, so you'll maybe have to. Years are creeping up in you.
Thank you, Ewan. Andrew, can you talk us through that sort of same point you left us last time, from taking that lamb up to kind of 2 months old to taking through to weaning? How do you work your system?
Very similar. Just a lot more of our lambs will be sold as stores rather than fat lambs. Sold through the local market here. Market do a great job of getting lambs sold, and the way the price has gone this year, early on, kind of 33, 34 kilo lamb was mid-90s kind of thing. So it was justifying keeping them through at that point, which now in hindsight, if we had kept them through a bit longer, you probably would have cashed in on them now kind of thing. But we sold a lot of lambs this year kind of straight off the mothers at probably averaging 35, 36. But we'd be very similar how they're treated. Apart from we're a bit later, our first lot of lambs won't be away till kind of first week in August, which is it's the first sale on the island. That's when the majority of folk will start punting off the first lot of lambs. They'll get their second ovary back or hepta back 4 to 6 weeks after the first one. They'll get an extra worm dose as well. Start weaning the first lot of lambs, I say, weaned off in August, and it just kind of from then on gradually, taking them off the mothers as and when, couple of sales in August, couple of sales in September. By the end of September, everything then that's not sold is taken off the mothers, and they're put on to, we'll do second cut silage kind of mid-August, and lambs then, weaned lambs in September will go on to that. We don't feed much creep. We fed a bit of creep this year, which it did work. We grow a lot of, about 40 acres of rape and stubble turnip mix to put lambs on to kind of November time through to about 6 weeks, sometimes through to January. We've been doing that for a lot of years, and it works well for putting fertility back into the ground, which is why we do it. We're saving on fertilizer going into the following crop of barley. So the lambs do great on that. They're then sold. They'll be fluked, get a fluke dose before going onto the rape turnip. They'll be on that then, and until usually middle of December. Then we've cleared our feet of pretty much everything, unless it's you're walking wounded, if you like. So they're on. This year they did get creep feed. The weather just turned pretty bad in December. It got hell of a wet. Turnips were turning soggy, so we shoved the hoppers in and we put a couple of ton of feeding into them, and it certainly paid for itself. The smaller lamb, the bigger lambs, we kind of kept them separate, and they weren't getting so much access to the feed, but the smaller lambs seemed to catch up, and we had a far more even batch of lambs going off the farm than what would have been if we hadn't creep fed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, good. And one thing that I know that you've done, Andrew, you can maybe share with us. You've used quite a lot of social media to help market your stock and to promote what you've been doing. Can you give us a bit of an insight on how you've done that?
We've got a Facebook and Instagram account, which is more Sophie, my partner, that she takes to do with that. But anything we're selling, right across the farm and calendar, really, we're taking videos and and photos and whatnot, and just advertising and showing the world what we're doing. Been quite proud of what we're doing, but we've maybe been a bit bold at times with the good. We'll put. One of the problems we've got on the farm is predation. We've got a lot of ravens, a lot of hooded crows and whatnot. They break your heart sometimes. I've seen me putting videos on of lambs with getting their eyes pecked out and whatnot. But I think these kind of things need shown for the general public to realise what's going on. But we will, any stock that gets sold, when they come into the bank or calves and whatnot into handling areas, we'll take videos of them. We'll shove them on Facebook. Markets, they sell the stock for you, but they'll share away at your videos, your photos. Advertise your stock a wee bit further. But it just, I think social media is pretty powerful these days, and it just lets more folk kind of see what's going to be going to the market before it's even at the market, if you like.
Yeah, no, good. Some good lessons there. Thank you for that. I think at this point, I'd like to take Jill Hunter in. Jill, we've heard both Andrew and Ewan speaking about the calendar year they've done there, and one area I'd like you to try and address, Jill, for us, particularly on the back of what we've been seeing from scanning results, pet lambs, surplus lambs. What advice would you give us when handling that this year?
So I guess coming into this year, those lambs have a good value to them, so don't be scared to do them well. So where do we start? Making sure actually they get a good dose of colostrum, preferably from a ewe that's in the flock. Whether or not they're going to go onto the milk machine or not, we would like them to get a dose of colostrum. Moving them onto the milk machine, and it doesn't matter what type of machine it is, the more often a lamb is fed, the better, as it would if it was suckling a ewe. So ad lib systems are definitely the best for getting the lambs growing. Making sure that we're feeding a good quality milk powder, making sure that it's the right temperature, it's the right concentration is always important as well. Pet lambs, the biggest tip would be clean the kit and then clean it again. Hygiene is so important because it spreads so quickly once it gets hold. The next thing then that we have to think about when we are dealing with these lambs is getting their little rumen developed just as quickly as we can. So supplying some creep feed just as soon as we can, and they'll just start nibbling at it. So we would be looking to, if everything's going fine, we would be looking to wean lambs off milk powder at about 35 days old. And we would be looking for them to be taking a good volume of creep feed by that stage. So making sure that the creep feed's good quality, a bit starchy, don't get too hung up on it being too high in protein, because actually it's the starch that helps the rumen development, and then we can grow them on later. So creep feed as early as possible, a supply of forage. Now, preferably that would be straw. Nice short, sharp, chopped wheat straw would be the preference to go alongside that, so they can get nibbling at it. Be careful with hay. Hay can absorb an awful lot of water, and you can end up with those little pot-bellied lambs that would look kind of pretty typical of a bottle-fed lamb. And then make sure as well that they've got access to water. Now, if a lamb is suckling properly and it's drinking its milk properly, actually that goes into one part of its stomach, and the water would go, so the milk would go into its abomasum, whereas the water would go into its rumen. So it's really important that you supply both, and that the lamb is able to drink water alongside the milk, the creep feed and the straw. And that will get our rumens developed, ready to wean at 35 days old onto creep. And I guess forecasting going forward, probably the best thing to do this year, when maybe fertilizer is a little bit more expensive, when grass might not be as plentiful, if we're saving on that, probably keeping these lambs inside, getting them finished as quickly as possible and off the place would be the advice this year.
Okay, thanks, Jill. And a second question before we just move on to some of the other questions that's come in. Yep. Andrew spoke about TMR and spoke about eradicating problems with prolapsing. Prolapsing is a huge cost on the industry, and what advice can you give generally to us on that, please? Yeah, so I was really interested when Andrew was saying about his total mixed ration there. So just making sure that every mouthful is the same, and it's really good for cattle, for sheep, to make sure that the ration is consistent as possible. Why does that work? So if we think about a ewe coming last 6 weeks of gestation, so last week 6 weeks before lambing, about 70% of the lamb and liquid growth happens in that time. So all of a sudden she's gone from having this big massive rumen to this really tiny little space where you've got to cram all of that energy and protein requirement into, which is already increased as well. So there's very little room in there, and anything that we can do to save a bit of room is good. So why does feeding a bulky TMR work? So it works because the rumen is really balanced, it's settled, and we're not producing excess gas. So if we think about more Ewan sort of situation where we're feeding rolls outside on the lead up before we bring ewes in, if we aren't feeding ewes consistently at the same time, split feeding, if the ewes aren't ready to digest the feed, if there's a little bit of acidosis, so this is when there's a bit of acid build up in the rumen and a bit of gas is produced,
that gas is filling that space, which then there's only so much room in there, and that can push out. There's no room left for the prolapse, and that's when that comes out. And there was something, I guess, a really good lesson that we heard when John Robinson was out to Wellheads, and John Robinson from Rowett. He was really, really key in pushing that message with us and making sure that I use timing for her feed is even down to 15 minutes. So if we're going at 7:30 to feed the ewes, let's go at 7:30 every day. Yeah, we've got to go and calve a cow, we've got to, whatever else we've got to do that happens, but even if it's just for that 6 weeks pre-lambing, be really, really strict on yourself. Do it, split it into 2 feeds if you're feeding over 0.5 kilo, and be really, really consistent with it.
Okay, thanks, Jill. And one last question for you just now, Jill. We're seeing a lot of kind of a green winter at this point in certain parts of the UK, and there's a lot of ewes carrying a potentially excess condition at this point. Is there any immediate points of warning or any points of management we should follow right now?
Yeah, so this is it's got me worried. Ewes across the country are in big fettle, even my own ewes as well. I guess that coupled with higher feeding prices this year, people might be drawn to not feed as much. Big warning on that. Ewes which are in big fettle are much more susceptible to twin lamb disease. So twin lamb disease is simply when the ewe can no longer get the energy out of her feed which she needs, because she's got that tiny little rumen, because of the lamb growth, and then she can't physically get her back fat mobilized quick enough. So when we mobilize back fat, all that has to go through the liver, and what happens is you produce these little ketones. If we're trying to do too much at one time, we end up kind of the system being overwhelmed, and you'll stop eating, which makes the problem worse, and she'll go off her legs and most likely abort the lambs to save herself. So what can we do? We can feed a little bit to make sure we're topping up that energy, making sure our feed is really energy dense, so good silage, topping up with good quality supplementary feed, and then the best thing, which both Andrew and Ewan are using there, are these energy buckets pre-lambing. So like the Vitality, that orange bucket that you see out there. 2 things in there that's really, really key for preventing twin lamb disease. First one is propylene glycol. So when ewe takes in propylene glycol, it's instant energy. Okay, it doesn't have to go through the liver for the ewe to be able to utilize it. So we've already got this liver that's really busy and trying to mobilize body fat. Let's not overload it. Let's just get the energy straight into the ewe. And the other important thing with Vitality is that there's no extra vegetable oil in it. So again, putting vegetable oil into these types of buckets looks really great on the label because we boost the energy level, but actually it's just going into the liver and we're overloading the liver, not necessarily meaning to as well. So Vitality really good for that and supporting the immunity and everything else in the ewe and the overall health as well. So for ewes, just don't be scared to feed them a little bit. Make sure we're topping up energy levels.
Thank you, Jill. Andrew, quick question for yourself. When do you mark your lambs?
They're marked pretty much at birth, really. As soon as they're dry, they're marked and out the door. Even the ones lambing inside, we're trying now to mark them as close to birth as we can, and that's just what works for us. But like I say, especially the inside ones, they're marked as soon as they're dry, navels are fed, the full up and sucked, and if they're ready to go out, they'll be marked. We don't mark lambs. If a lamb's not fit to go out the door, it's not marked. We just feel like if it's no fit to go out the door, we'll no add that wee bit extra kind of thing. But lambs that are up full and sucked and ready to go out the door, they're marked and gone.
Okay, thank you. A question is, either of yourself, Andrew, or Ewan, been bothered with coccidiosis?
We have been, not so much these days, but we certainly were in the past. Had quite a lot of problems with cocci, and we found that Vicoxin drench does work in the areas. We've got a couple of fields. I don't know if it's part of it's because of low pH in some of the fields, possibly, but which they said could be a cause of it, poorer quality grass. But the Vicoxin certainly worked, and if we get couple of lambs in a batch that's got coxswain, we just dose the whole batch and it pretty much wipes it out there and then kind of thing.
Okay. Ewan, is it?
No, thankfully it's something we don't have to deal with at all. Andrew's saying about sticking the fields. Our biggest thing, we've got quite a few fields that are real prone to blackleg or clostridial diseases. So yeah, obviously yows are on Heptivac, lambs Ovivac, and any cattle out, we double vaccinate any calves with Bravoxin or blackleg before they get to grass.
Okay. Another question has come in. Have either of you had any experience with septicemia?
No,
not the best of my knowledge. No.
No. Okay. Good. And another question: have either of the panelists used forage crops to feed their ewes in the lead up to lambing before?
We've never used forage crops. We have post lambing, but never pre lambing, for the simple reason we don't do it is just what going on from what Jill said about yow, small room in, lambs taking up a lot of room. Forage crops, which is swades or something, is quite a bulky feed. But we've just found better off sticking with the rolls and a more concentrated feed to make sure you're meeting the yow's demands at that time.
Thank you, Andrew.
No, we've never ever lambing. No.
Okay. I guess just coming to the end of our evening and just a few minutes left, I think a question I would like to ask both of you, and it's really is seriously encouraging that we've got such understanding and enthusiasm for sheep in our area and our industry. Sheep has come under a lot of pressure when it spoke about Brexit and it spoke about future look quite gloomy, and thankfully we've seen a real positive returns on sheep in the last couple of years. You're both very committed. Where do you see the future? Maybe Andrew, you want to answer first?
Well, certainly at the moment we're carrying on as normal, trying to cut costs where we can and maximise as well, kind of thing. But it's the case of just keep calm and carry on farming. Really, it's there are some folk even on the island. There's folk that put stock off, more so kind of older farmers that they haven't got anyone coming up underneath them to take over. But we're a great believer that most of our stock are homebred. You start putting numbers off and you have to go and put them back on again. It's not so easy. So we've got what the farm can carry. The farm could carry more stock than what it's got, more so in the summer, not so much in the winter time. But at the moment, we're just going to keep going as we are, improve where we can, and just keep farming. Really. Good.
Ewan?
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, with our type of farm, we're pretty tied to what we can do. I don't think you'd be diversifying into vegetables or anything anytime soon. We did used to grow maybe about 70 to 100 acres of cereals, but since I've returned home, decided to take that out. For all the barley we need quite a lot of straw, but that's all bought locally. But yeah, keeping. So we just increase cow numbers and yow numbers accordingly, as we felt that that's what we're here to do, and with the type of ground to do it. And it was quite, we're set up for both, so it was quite easy to do both, as opposed to growing barley when we've no handling facilities, no combine, no grain dryer, no drill, sprayer, etc. So yeah, hopefully the sheep price remains good, and that will just carry on.
Good. We're on a competition for the webinar, and I've got a wee note to say that Michelle Bodley from Dumfries and Galloway has won 5 buckets of Energised Vitality and a lambing kit. So we'll be in touch with that. And we've also got a number of questions we haven't actually had time to get to, so we can try and answer them back to everyone that's put in. So at this point, I'd like to thank everybody for participating, for joining us, and a real note of sincere thanks both to Andrew, Ewan, Jill for joining. It's been very enjoyable and really appreciate your honesty. And I would like to wish you the best of luck in this year's lambing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone.
Take care.